Okay.
That looks better than it did before.
Hopefully, we'll have to edit out all the craziness. Hopefully that's working. All right, Mr. Zabin, I believe we are live now. I can get in my little yoga pose. So, my wife just had a crazy car accident the other day, and luckily she is okay. She's very, very sore, so I don't think doing chokeholds and things like that are going to be very, very nice on her neck and back. How you doing, Mandy?
I'm happy to be alive.
I'm happy you are alive as well. So, my son is joining us today. Jump in the party. He's had his own accident not too long ago. Still recovering from a freak frisbee accident where he slipped off and cracked his ankle. But luckily we had a pair of crutches. Didn't have to go to the ER because that would be terrible right now.
I was able to walk within 3-4 days.
Yeah.
But I still can't stretch it out all the way without it hurting.
So we're going to do a lot of foot locks tonight. Twisting ankle locks, toe holds, all that good stuff. But really, actually, I wanted to start just a discussion tonight about some of the silliness that we see in martial arts and how it's still, it's mind-boggling to me that there is still people out there that believe that you can knock somebody out without having to touch them, with like using chi or energy. There's so much hokiness out there. It's unbelievable. I really thought when I first started martial arts, like I really thought that I kind of believed some of that stuff. Like, I watched the movies. I knew that it was sensationalized to a certain degree, but I didn't really have a whole lot of experience fighting. I was really experienced at not getting into fights. Like I was really good at talking my way out of it. But I saw a lot of fights growing up, and I just thought that what you saw in the movies sometimes some of that stuff would work because maybe that they were really skilled at it. And the sensationalism in Hollywood and all that, it's weird. Like I used to like that stuff, and then when I started Jiu-Jitsu, I'm like, I hate all that stuff. I just wanted to see realism and stuff like that. Now I actually appreciate sort of the crazy stuff like John Wick and stuff like that, or Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, just because of the beauty of the choreography and the cinematography and everything. So it's an artistic thing. I don't take anything away from it of value when it comes to real fighting. I thought that we learned everything we needed to know, like in the first few UFCs. Like there was limited rules, like they locked you in a cage. There were 2 men enter, 1 man leave, right? Thunderdome. In real life, I mean, they even actually, Jorge and Gracie was talking about possibly putting like a moat around the octagon. There was talks of putting a moat around the octagon with like alligators and stuff.
Oh my God.
And it was it's wild, but that was true. I mean, that was one of the ideas, just to kind of sensationalize or whatever. But what happened inside the octagon was real. Like And what you realized, what you found out is that the grapplers really already knew what was going to go down. And most of the traditional martial arts, and not that there's anything wrong with them. It's not a diss on any martial art, okay? But I will diss on the hokiness, right? Every martial art is rooted in reality at some point, right? There was a necessity. I just think that Jiu-Jitsu, as we know it now, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu specifically, answers that quintessential question. What is the most effective form of self-defense against somebody who's bigger, stronger, more aggressive, you name it, physically more capable than us? And Jiu-Jitsu was the one that shined and came out on top. If you saw a lot of the guys who were doing these crazy straight, not that there's anything wrong with it, but all of them abandoned their style and just started swinging for the fences. And once it went to the ground, they had no idea what to do. So I really thought that was it. That was the end of it. Like all the hokey martial arts, I'm like, where's the no-touch guy? Why hasn't he showed up and won a UFC championship yet? But there's always that argument. You know what the argument is?
What?
What we do is too deadly. I love it. So, yeah, to me, it blows me away that these people still actually have students too, and oh yeah, it's still out there. But I think a lot of it is there's a power of suggestion. If you've ever seen like hypnotists, you know, they even, I mean, some of the comedian hypnotists will even tell you right out of the gate, I'm like, I'm not making anybody do this. They're just very suggestible. And it has nothing to do with intelligence, right? In fact, I mean, some highly intelligent people are also extremely highly suggestible. And I hope that's not true for me. I hope. But yeah, it is what it is. It's just, it's nuts. And I thought that was it. That was going to be the end of it. And yeah, but it's not. And you have these, it's just crazy. So yeah, I guess my rant is done with that. I wanted to go into a lot of other rants, but I'll leave it at that.
You ready for some questions?
I have channeled my chi. I'm ready for some questions. Bring them on.
All right, so David wants to know, have you ever had to kick a visitor out of the gym? If so, why? And also self-defense neck cranks.
Self-defense neck cranks. Awesome. Mandy, you ready? Yes, I have. I had to kick... I had to kick a few people out. Visitors, usually, for the most part, people who do jiu-jitsu that visit, that come from another school, almost always, almost every single situation has been a positive experience. I think, you know, just doing jiu-jitsu, just like we were talking about before, it's a very honest art. You know right away what works, what doesn't, just by way of just trying it against somebody who's fully resisting you. So you gain confidence in it. I think through that process, I think you learn humility, really. And for the most part, as long as you're in a healthy environment, healthy gym, and you have a healthy mindset, we've rarely had bad issues with people who visit from other jiu-jitsu schools. Most of the time, it's extremely positive. I did have one guy that I had to ask to not come back. I had to invite him to not train jiu-jitsu anymore because, well, yeah, there were a few. But one in particular, funny enough, actually, he showed up one day. We thought there was something off with the guy because he would stand up and like in the middle of everybody's doing shrimp crawls. He'd do like a couple and he'd stand up and he'd walk along. Like you're doing a shrimp crawl, you know, when it takes a shrimp up and down the mat, he'd walk along and just stare at you. And you know, every now and then, like, you remember me telling you about this guy at all? And I'm like, hey man, you okay? Oh yeah, I'm okay. Why aren't you doing the shrimp crawls? What's going on? So we knew something wasn't up. In fact, one of our old students, Casey, he's like, man, I got my knife in my gi. I'm like, dude, don't put your knife away. Like, well, I think he was kind of concerned about the guy kind of just doing something crazy. Later on, I found out later that he actually suffered from a mental illness. After I had a little bit of a deeper conversation with him, he was schizophrenic, and I just, you know, I had to ask him he was having some delusions, and you know, I had to ask him to leave. But one of the funniest things about that's not funny. Mental illness is obviously not a funny thing, and I had no joy in asking him to leave. But the one funny thing that happened there was that he showed up, and I don't know if he misunderstood from one of the instructors or something, but my friend Austin was teaching a class that night. He showed up, and the guy was waiting, and he's like, hey, how's it going? And he's like, I'm doing great. You know, he was actually a nice guy. Just, you know, he just had issues that he just was not ready for jiu-jitsu at the time, and it wasn't, I don't think, a healthy thing for him. So he jumps up. He's like, yeah, I'm doing good, man. Doing really good. I got my ninja suit. And so he's just like, oh yeah. He's like, he thought he bought a gi. Like that was his. And sure enough, he goes in the changing room and comes out in a full-on ninja suit. Like he just went to the martial arts store and that's what he wanted to wear. So that was kind of comical. But yeah, that was not a fun conversation. I never enjoy asking somebody not to come back. But yeah. So a little bit of fun in there, a little bit of like, oh man, this really sucks. So that's never a fun conversation, but yeah, sometimes it has to be done. And there are others that are not as fun. You're looking at me like there's another question.
There is.
I'll get back to the neck crank stuff.
Griffin Thompson says he's interested in joining Gracie, Ohio after everything is safe again.
Awesome.
What should he do?
Well, we're actually trying to figure out now how to start. It's very possible that, at least in Ohio, that we may have an opportunity to start training in some form or fashion as early as May 1. So we're actually putting together some packages. Our schedule will most likely change. Before we had the shutdown, our fundamentals classes, it was not uncommon to have well over 30 people on the mat, very, very packed environment. That's probably not going to be realistic at the beginning. So there's going to probably be some modifications, which I would imagine is probably the case with a lot of jiu-jitsu schools across the country. We have not determined exactly yet what it's going to look like. We're not really sure. But I do believe that one thing that we're doing right now, which is a lot of this, we have an online curriculum for our students that we've been actually developing for a while, but this is kind of fast forward to that whole process. So we will probably have our fundamentals curriculum fully online and fully available for really anybody anywhere, even if they're not in our city available. Now that package may look different if we'll probably have, and for any of our students, this is going to be, especially the ones who have stuck through with us, this is all going to be available with their current membership already, and what may have to happen is that we have, maybe a slot where you have your group trains at this particular time. I hope this is what we can build up to, at least, where we have, the small groups, like say a pod of 4 people that train in this area, this group trains over here, but we also have the supplemental training at home. Because there's some people that are probably not comfortable coming back into the room just yet. So they may have health issues or one of those underlying conditions that makes COVID-19 a very, very serious illness for them. But we're learning a lot more day by day about this illness, and I think that I'm very hopeful that we'll come to figure out what our new normal is very, very soon. So that's our objective, is really to start being able to service students all over the world, actually. Maybe not actually in the same way that we can in our school, but I think that online piece is going to be just a part of our training environment for a good bit. So we're just trying to find our best opportunity, or best ways of integrating those things with the in-house training, and in some ways that's kind of exciting thing. It's still nerve-wracking owning a martial arts school where you can't practice your martial art with your students. Like, it's very, very frustrating, but it's obvious that we needed to really find out what is going on with this illness, and try to, we're getting there, and we'll have some trials and things like that available soon with the online store. We've got our gear up online right now, and we'll probably offer some packages where we start out with the online curriculum and a gi and things like that. So we're trying to put those things together now. So stay tuned to GracieOhio.com, and we'll have more information for you soon. So looking forward to seeing you on the mat. Thanks for the question. All right.
Lane Andrews.
Lane, what's up?
Says he's a strong believer in the death touch. He spent 10 years meditating on this subject and has it mastered. How can you say it's not real?
Oh, Lane. Oh, I hope I don't butcher your school's name, but RMNU South Tampa. Lane is an awesome instructor. We absolutely loved having him at our academy. We were blessed to have him there for a good bit. I mean, probably 4, 5, 6 years, and just a wealth of knowledge. Lane is one of those guys who started doing MMA. Like, he started doing MMA when I started doing jiu-jitsu, right? Like full on, right out of the gate, and like early on MMA, no gloves. And so he's kidding around with me, I'm sure, but we've had these discussions, and especially in the Midwest, and when it was still new, even as blue belts, like, these guys would come from these other martial arts, and Lane can attest to this as well. It was kind of comical because, what would happen is that they would come in, and it was almost always a challenge in some way. right? It didn't always involve throwing punches or anything like that, but there was always like, I want to see what this is all about. I think I can beat this because I've been doing this martial art for 10, 12, 15 years, whatever. They would come in, and a blue belt would handle them easily, right? I mean, guys who had years and years of stand-up training, but if they had no skills on the ground, the fight would get to a clinch, it would get taken to the ground almost immediately, and they would get submitted fairly quickly. And so one of two things would happen. Either they would come up with an excuse and find a way to deal with their own, where they couldn't handle their own ego, right? Or they couldn't handle the hit to their ego. They would leave and never come back, right? And just live in their bubble. Or what would quite a bit of what would happen was they would take that dose of honesty and just say, you know what, I need to learn this. And I think that's really I think Lane was on a very similar path as me, although a much better athlete and much more experience in the fighting realm. It was a different world back then, and I'm glad I kind of went through it, but I'm glad we're kind of past it. And the vast majority of people realize that so much of the silliness out there, the dim mock and stuff like that, it's just, vast majority of people, but unfortunately there's still people who fall into it. They just get roped into, I think people just really want to believe in superpowers. They don't want to realize, I don't think they want to deal with the fact that it takes a long time and a lot of dedication and a lot of basically being humbled every day on the mat to get to a point of proficiency. To develop a real skill, it takes some time, especially to take that skill and be able to transfer it and deal with somebody who's much bigger and stronger than you. It just takes a lot of experience and time. If you hear a child in the back screaming and singing, that's my daughter outside, my 3-year-old having a ball. She's most likely probably running around naked out there. So don't worry, she won't jump into the screen. But good to see you, Lane. Thanks for joining in.
Dustin Hayes, I'm not even going to attempt to read whatever that is that he asked about.
A Kamehameha wave? I have no idea what that is, but yes. Right through the screen, right at you, buddy. That should have knocked you out. We'll see you next time.
And Geraldo is watching from Brazil, wants to know if you've ever been there.
Yes, I have. I was lucky enough, the places that I wanted to, thanks for the question, by the way. Hello to all my Brazilian friends. Hope everybody's staying safe down there. But yes, I was lucky enough to spend, I had a training camp down there for the World's Championships in 2005?
Yeah.
Yes, 2005. I had a break. My whole martial arts trajectory was this. I had a job that paid enough I worked enough hours to pay my bills and my jiu-jitsu habit. So I worked like 30, 35 hours a week bartending. This is before I met my lovely wife. And so I could train. So if the class was at Wednesday night, I worked Wednesday during the day. If the class was during Thursday during the day, I'd work Thursday night. So I was always able to work around my training schedule, so that was awesome. And so I was a jiu-jitsu hippie for a long time. I was a mat rat. That's all I cared about. All I wanted to do was train jiu-jitsu. And I did, and I got to a certain point where I thought in my head, okay, I moved to Columbus to do this, to learn this art as best as possible. Sorry, Aunt, joining our little party here. And then I figured the next step for me was to move to Hawaii, and when I was able to go to Brazil and train there too. Because at that point, by the time I got up to close to purple belt, most of the best instructors, or quite a few of the best instructors, a lot of them really good instructors, at least as far as the Gracies were concerned, in that lineage, were here in the U.S. Because the demand was so high and there was so much skill already in Brazil. So, but everybody knew at the time, if you wanted to really challenge yourself and get like really good hard training, like you could get it in the U.S. in certain spots. Like Helson's Academy was amazing, one of the best rooms in the country for sure. But if you really wanted to challenge yourself, you'd have to go to Brazil, right? To compete, you name it. That was the holy land of jiu-jitsu. And so I knew that was on the list. I had to do that. So there were 3 places I really wanted to go, and maybe not live, but at least to visit long term. Hawaii, I wanted to move there. That was my plan until I met my lovely wife, and this guy came along, and that changed, and that's okay because the training in Ohio was amazing, and I incredible opportunities. But I had an opportunity in 2005. I was in between jobs, and I went down to Brazil for a training camp and to compete at the 2005 World Championships. It was my last year as brown belt, and I went down there and stayed in the yacht club in Jardim Guanabara. I hope I didn't butcher that pronunciation, but I'm sure he knows where that's at. It's on the outskirts of Rio, and I spent 3.5 weeks, almost a full month in Brazil, training every day, twice a day, with world champions, Daniel Moraes. There were a lot of really good guys down there that we were training with, but I was training with Daniel every day, and some of his students and training partners. We went over and trained at Gracie Ohio, a couple other places, and just had an amazing experience. That whole 3.5 weeks, I gained some weight, but it was all healthy weight, and it was a great experience. But so I'm glad I had the opportunity to do that, and I'd love to go back down again sometime. But next time I go down, I'm definitely taking my wife. After about 3 weeks, I was like, okay, it's time to go home. I miss my family, and I loved the training, but that was a long time to be away from home. So, man, shout out to anybody who's in a military family, because I couldn't imagine being separated that long. So, yeah, I did. I had an awesome time down there. I can't wait to go back again. So, but the next thing I'm going to do is go to Hawaii. Hopefully, I'm going to take my wife there too. So, next question.
That's it for questions.
Oh yeah, right on. So I have to get back to neck cranks. I've been talking this whole video about silliness, and we're almost a half hour in. Holy smokes! Okay, so time to get your neck cranked. Okay, right. So most people are already aware of the can opener. This is a pretty gnarly one, and you can do a lot of damage with neck cranks. So keep that in mind. We don't allow them at certain belt levels as far as a daily practice. Anything that causes cervical, this here like this, we don't do it on a daily basis, but this is my thought on the whole thing. When I first started training, probably every 5th technique was a neck crank that they would share. Okay, so there's a lot of neck cranking back then, but the reality is that you may not train them every single day that you're training, but you have to understand and respect them, because people in a fight, okay, even if they have no previous grappling experience, what is the most common grappling technique of all times, David? Do you know? Headlock, exactly, which can be, and is quite often, a neck crank, okay? And so any variation, any form of that, this would happen all the time. Like early on, when I was talking about people who'd come in and train, the ones that gave us the hardest times were wrestlers, because they were familiar with how to grapple on the ground. And they understood the concept and the understanding of body manipulation and control, and a lot of it has to do with the head. What's one of the first things that when wrestlers do is start getting grips on where? Arms and heads, right? To control, okay? To pull, as they say, what's the saying? Where the bulls, where the head goes, the body goes. But somebody, I'm totally butchering it. Something with bulls and horns. I don't know. You guys get what I'm saying?
I get the idea.
You get the idea. And the reality is that in a fight, if you get inside that punching distance, a headlock or some type of neck wrap is an extremely likely scenario, okay? And so when wrestlers would come in, they didn't really have an understanding of how to pass the guard back then, or even a need to. They didn't want to, right? They would just go and start cranking on your neck and wrapping you up here, okay? So my favorite one, I think I shared a while back. I think I did it to you. maybe. I'm not sure. Did I do that the crazy neck crank?
I don't remember.
That Helson, yeah. So obviously, can opener is like this. There's a lot of pressure, right? And so you have to get used to defending these sorts of situations. So I think it's important to throw them into your training from time to time with more skilled grapplers and really have an understanding that you have to protect your neck. And that's why I'm not a huge fan in positions like side control. I don't use the underhook very much in side control. I know that's sacrilege in the jiu-jitsu world, but the fact is that competition rules, when you add certain rules in, they change the behavior and the techniques that are utilized and the strategies that are utilized. So if you're not allowed to neck crank in competition and your focus is fully on competing in jiu-jitsu, it's just like striking. Why would you work on it? Why would you focus on it? Well, in a real fight, two things, you can guarantee a few things. Number one is somebody's going to roll up their knuckles and they're going to try to punch you, okay? The other one is if you get in range, they're going to try to wrap your neck in some form or fashion. That's just reality. So I always try to fashion my jiu-jitsu in this way because it was taught to us this way, is that you want to protect yourself. And so when we're in side control like this, if he has an underhook in a position like this, his neck's fully exposed to get wrapped, okay? And so, yeah, if I'm not allowed to crank the neck, it limits me. But what if I am? What if it's a fight and you get your neck wrapped? So it's one of the reasons I have pretty ears. I've grappled a long time. It's not a genetic thing. You know, I don't have a whole lot of cauliflower ear because I don't like getting my neck wrapped. I hate it. So with that being said, I'll show you one that I learned early on. I like it a lot, especially when the person has got an underhook and they're turning to their side. So he gets to his side, I see an opportunity, I'm gonna wrap here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna feed my own collar. So I get a good wrap and I'm gonna reach deep and I'm gonna feed my own collar, okay? Because I'm not worried about choking him, and wrapping this is too cumbersome to get that choke, right? At least in this situation. It's not impossible, but it's very difficult. So I'm reaching for my own collar. So when he gets to his side, I'm gonna reach here. Now I have the neck wrapped, I'm gonna feed my own collar. I take a lot of that space away. Now what I wanna do is I wanna get him back flat. So I can push on the hip, or I can grab the inside of the pants here, push him flat, I'm gonna drop my hips here. So as you feel that? It's a lot of shearing pressure like this. I'm gonna spin this direction so you guys can see on this side. So I let him get to his side. So he turns to his side, I wrap, and I'm gonna take this collar and I'm gonna feed it deep. I sink myself down nice and deep, okay? Now that I have it, I'm gonna push him back flat, I'm gonna drop my hips and I'm angling and pulling this back like this, okay? It's a lot of pressure when you push the
head this way.
Yeah, so it's gonna crank it this way, but you also have that shearing pressure with the forearm here. It's pretty gnarly, you know? And this is a very, very simple concept here. Just anytime you have the opportunity, just wrapping the neck. Now, right now, I have a chin strap, okay? So I'm actually, instead of grabbing the collar first, I can just grab his actual chin, okay? So I can grab the chin, and I can actually switch here. So let's say I'm not practicing neck cranks. Well, a guillotine is still very much kind of a neck crank, right? And that's if we've learned anything about the dangers of training martial arts, mixed martial arts especially, if there's any the two main things that causes major spinal injuries are when people are stuck in guillotines and they end up going into takedown. There's been a number of people who've been paralyzed from those situations, and flying techniques, landing on the head. Those are just terrible. But so if you don't want to practice the neck cranks, at least practice this one. So you're reaching here, boom. Okay, I want to get underneath the chin, right? If you guys can see, I'm already grabbing here. Okay, so once I have a hold of that, even if he tucks his chin, it's too late for him. I'm going to switch my hips. I'm going to grab grab my hand now. So once I'm here, I'm going to shift it in a little bit deeper. Okay, I switch my hips and I throw this leg over top. Okay, and now I'm going to finish the choke just like this. Okay, I'm dropping my hips in, but I don't want to go full on to the mount. The guillotine can really turn into a serious neck crank if we roll over into the mount position. So be cautious when you're doing that, and make sure that you're practicing and doing this slowly and giving your partner time to tap. Okay. So yeah, I mean.
Dustin asked, is there a reason you would use a crank over a choke?
Yeah, if it's my son, I owe it to him to prepare him properly. So I'm gonna crank on his neck. No, I shouldn't say that. Well, keep in mind that I think really, you can go ahead and sit up. I'll maybe share another one here in a second, but that's probably the simplest one, that neck wrap there. But I would probably never, from a training standpoint, I would probably never I would never prioritize a crank over a chokehold. Because the chokehold will render my opponent unconscious. A neck crank, we have to take this through, right? And think about what is it that a neck crank is going to do. Well, at some point, it's going to break the neck, okay? Do I really want to break this person's neck? Or do I want to render him unconscious? So if I had the option, of course, I'm always going to favor the chokehold, okay? From a training perspective, I want to broaden my knowledge as much as possible from both the offensive side as well as the defensive side. And so me capturing him in a neck crank and doing it slowly, he knows when to tap. So as long as I do it, give him enough time to tap, he can tap before injury occurs, okay? And that's going to help prepare him to, so if you can protect yourself against the neck crank, you'll be able to, eventually you'll be able to protect, you'll get better at defending neck, and you'll get better at defending chokes as well. So anytime the neck is exposed, it's just another way of applying a submission. So as far as, I hope did I answer that question properly? I speak too much sometimes. She's yawning over here. She's getting tired. I'm putting her to sleep. See?
It's not like I have a concussion or anything.
No touch chokehold. I'm putting her to sleep. Look, see that? I told you. Enlightenment. That might be a good place to stop. Do we have any other questions? Mm-mm. All right. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Thanks, Lane. Good to see you, man. Hope you guys are all doing well down there in Tampa. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We had a little bit of a hiccup there at the beginning. But yeah, be careful with your training partners. Don't break their necks. Be good to each other. Yeah, all that good stuff. That's it. We'll see you Saturday at noon. We're back. Boom. All right. Take care, everyone. Stay safe.